Welcome to Certain Point of View, your first step into a much nerdier world. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes. Just go to certainpov.com. Thanks. And now your hosts, Ben Milton and Addy Thomas.
Hey Nerf Herders, I'm Addy Thomas.
And I am Ben Milton.
Thanks for joining us. We've got Guardians of the Galaxy 2. We just finished watching it. Before we get to that, though, just want to remind you, you can follow everything we're doing from Patreon to the Weight Loss Civil War and all of our social media and all the exploits that we go through on a day-to-day basis. All of that is on certainpov.com. Right now, we're going to get right into the review. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, we just got out of, we had a little bit of an adventure getting back home.
We're on 495, which is the major highway going around Washington, D.C., if you're not in the area. And it's raining fairly heavily. And all of a sudden, the truck's making kind of weird noise. Whatever. We're low on gas, but the gauge isn't on. So I'm like, okay, everything. And then all of a sudden, the truck just dies.
Yeah.
We're doing 65 miles an hour in the rain on a crowded highway. And I'm like, well, find the first exit. Hope we make it. And we didn't make it off the exit. We made it to the exit, 3/4 of the way around the bends of the exit, and just got stuck there. And luckily, J Mike came to help us. But we didn't need him to. I was able to start the truck again out of nowhere. It just started working again. So that was an hour of our life out after the movie. So here we are now, tired, but still really excited about the movie, man. The movie was amazing.
Yeah, going into it, I didn't really have expectations. I didn't try to lower my expectations, but I didn't try to raise my expectations either. I didn't even go and rewatch the movie, which is often a thing I do for any sequel to a movie, is I'll rewatch its prequels. And I didn't do this. And I mean, Guardians of the Galaxy up until this point has been my favorite Marvel movie by far, and one of my top 10 movies too. So it had a lot to live up to for me.
Yeah, when you say I didn't have a lot of expectations, that's a lot of expectations.
Well, that normally would be, but that's why I was kind of you know what? I just want this to be a fun movie. That's all I really wanted, and maybe a good emotional moment here, that, because I think that's really what encapsulates what I enjoy about the first movie is it's fun and there's a good emotional payoff and a good clear character arc and story to it.
Yeah,
this really built on it, and because I'm always there's always the fear you have the obvious comparison of Empire Strikes Back is the ultimate sequel to a movie,
right,
and one that is superior to its predecessor in a lot of ways. And so I didn't want to put Empire expectations on it, but I feel we got a very Empire-ish, in terms of the function of what it did to further the story and build on what was set up in A New Hope. This did a very admirable job of doing that with the characters in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, we talked very briefly as we were sitting on the side of the road in the dark, in the rain, praying hard that we do not get just crushed by a semi truck.
Right.
That I thought it was a better movie than the first. Yeah. I think that it did more. The first one was great because it's created the world, and we've already have this universe, but it took Marvel out into space. It took Marvel out of its grounded, normal routine, which was fantastic. And this then built on that universe and created an even bigger universe, a stranger universe, and really got into the personalities of some of these characters and how this group works together and doesn't work together, and the function and dysfunction of the group, and dealt with some really kind of weird ideas of family and who you are and
purpose, and sort of some high concept stuff, especially with the villain.
And a really weird villain too, an odd choice for a villain, but ultimately
compelling.
Yeah, really interesting.
Yeah. Really
interesting.
Yeah, because the first one, I really liked the very simple arc with Star-Lord. The other characters have sort of mini arcs in the first movie, and they're satisfying for what they are. But Star-Lord is clearly the feature, and Star-Lord is definitely the feature in this movie as well. But the other characters' arcs also take some important space up. Yondu, Nebula, Rocket. Groot honestly kind of moves a little bit more to the background. He's a lot of comic relief.
Yeah.
But I really felt like Drax kind of stole the show in the way that Groot did in the previous movie.
Yeah. Well, they gave him a lot more to do.
Yeah.
He had a lot more to do in this movie.
Yeah.
He had a lot more things to say and a lot more ways to move the plot forward. You're right. Groot was used almost exclusively as a comic relief. They're really other than the very final scene with the bomb, he really didn't have anything to do other than make people laugh.
Which I think is good because he did a really great job in the first movie of providing that emotional core by the end of it. That sacrifice was good. So it would have been forced to try to do that again. And not just do that again, but to make him a bigger character than he is, and let him get a big moment when I assume we'll see him in Infinity Wars in a big way. Give him some big moments there instead. But having him mostly as Baby Groot in this movie served an interesting role for how he interacted and brought out interesting moments, very, very, very small character moments for each person.
How they interact with him and care for him.
It was a really sort of interesting thing that I didn't really realize until one of the final scenes.
The extra scene at the end?
No, actually, I was thinking the funeral for again, spoilers, major spoilers. I don't know why you're listening to this if you're not expecting spoilers, but I'm just warning you. This
Spoilers.
is a huge plot point. Yeah. But at Yondu's funeral,
right?
The way each of them are sort of caring for him,
right,
was sort of an interesting,
touching, and how he really was reaching out for different ones to get different things from them.
Right.
Was interesting, and that he chose I thought it was really interesting that he chose Drax to snuggle into and fall asleep to. He found comfort in Drax. Yeah. That safety of Drax.
And Drax had a really sort of interesting moment because Drax as a character can't be emotional, but having the new addition to the group with Mantis, that provided a pretty emotionally profound moment when she tears up feeling his love for his lost family, his dead wife and daughter.
Right.
And I thought that was a great way to kind of have that.
Tap into the horror and sadness of his life. Yeah. It was really, really smart. The movie was really well done. It was really well, from beginning to, there were so many laughs in this movie. The opening scene is hysterical.
Yeah. With
hysterical.
The credits,
yeah. It's hysterical.
I thought the first one was great with Star-Lord dancing and singing into the rat and everything. You thought that was how can you outdo that? As a template goes, it knew sort of the same beats that the first movie did, but you had to improve on those to further your journey with these characters.
Yeah.
The only real thing I think, and it's not even a complaint, but I like the soundtrack for the first movie a little bit better personally.
Yeah, I agree. I did too.
But
there's some great songs in this one.
There were. I mean, there were a couple a little bit closer with Yondu killing everyone on the all those raptors.
That scene for me stole the movie.
Yeah,
it really did. That was just so beautiful and powerful and encapsulated who I thought Yondu in the Marvel Cinematic Universe is.
Yeah.
Which
is great to see fantastic. That kind of depth for us. What started out as a side character and obviously comes into his own in a big way. Let's talk about that arc. That arc is huge. And for a side character, that's not something you would have expected. For them to necessarily turn him into a bigger character in this movie. I love Michael Rooker.
Oh, he's the best.
Merle is still one of my favorite characters from The Walking Dead, and his death in that show affected me, and still I don't think I've gotten over it. I felt I got over it, and then I saw him die in here, and I was like, "Damn it, Rooker!" I was really excited. I was legitimately blindsided by it. I know you said there was a moment earlier where you pinpointed he was going to die. I started seeing it a little bit in the big climactic fight. There was a moment before it was clearly telegraphed he was going to die, but that I was like, oh well, yeah, he's going to die now, but. I really thought, though, going into this movie that he's going to get a chance to join the Guardians. He's going to be redeemed. And then,
both of which are true.
Yes, both of them very true. That delivered well on my expectation, but that we'll get another movie with them. Maybe we'll even get a chance to see him in Infinity War. And
Nope.
Not so much anymore.
Nope. Not gonna happen this time.
Yeah.
Rooker stole this movie for me.
Yeah.
Like he is a scene stealing son of a bitch. Like I loved him in Mallrats.
Yep.
I loved him in Walking Dead. Like to me, Walking Dead has not been as much fun to watch since he died.
Yeah, the wild card that he was on that show was amazing, and the way he affected Daryl. I think he was. I know it was sidetracking into Walking Dead for a second. I think he was important for Daryl's development to go insert at some point. But yeah, no, absolutely.
I mean, there's times when I watch that show and I think, I kind of wish Daryl was dead and Rooker was still with us.
That would have been an interesting turn. Yeah. I can't say that I wouldn't like that.
But for this movie, I think he had sort of the same thing where he just kind of he just stole the scenes he was in. Everything he did was just amazing. Like from from the comedy stuff that he was doing with Rocket and Groot to like the really serious stuff that he was doing with Star-Lord. And with Rocket, his scene with Rocket,
and with Star-Lord, like as a father figure to Star-Lord, and as
a mentor,
and to Rocket as someone who saw himself where Rocket could end up going.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a fascinating way to flesh out Rocket, because Rocket is not a complex character. Rocket is a fun character. I've read some of his solo comics. There isn't a whole lot of depth to it, but man, I did not expect any depth with him going into this movie.
You got a really poignant moment about Rocket and about family and about relating to other people in your family. I mean, it was really good, like really smart, really well written stuff. Like that gave the film heart. Like this film has a lot of heart in it.
There are very few people who I think are capable of being writer directors. James Gunn is it. I feel that if I became a director, I would want my sensibilities to be a lot like his.
Right.
Because I like his balance of comedy, his a little bit of irreverence in that comedy, but not over the top either.
Right. It's not slapsticky.
Yeah. But it doesn't even go like it will get a little crude, but it won't like go overly like I don't expect like I would in I don't expect it to be as dumb sometimes as a Seth Rogen comedy can be. Because even when Seth Rogen tries to be smart, it doesn't always work, But there's a great I like his sensibility. I like the emotional balance in his movie. Like I saw Super not when it came out, but when it got to home release.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed Super. I didn't realize that was a James Gunn movie back then when I watched it. But then looking back on it, I really really enjoy that. Obviously in Guardians 1 and I've got to check out some of the rest of his filmography at this point.
Yeah.
But he clearly knows how to handle these characters. He clearly him and Marvel is it's definitely a match made in heaven at this point.
Yeah, I mean they seem to have given him a long enough leash where he can really make interesting films in the Marvel universe, and they're well made. Like honestly, like this movie felt complete. Like it didn't feel like it was missing any holes. It didn't have any real. I mean, like we're an hour and a half out away from seeing it, but I didn't notice any major plot holes or any odd motivations. It all worked, which is really, really hard to do in the Marvel universe because you're usually juggling a lot of balls and, you're having to continue this continuity to build this storyline that, is complex.
Right.
This has never really been done before.
What did you think with the relationship with Nebula and Gamora? I know Gamora was the one you felt a little bit it was a little dry.
She just didn't have as much to do. Yeah. I mean, she had the relationship to build off of with Nebula. Nebula, they fleshed out quite a bit more and really kind of gave her motivation and story.
Villain.
Right. Yeah. There was something there. And as a result, you found out a little bit more about Gamora. it was good. It was good. Like, when you have an ensemble cast like that, like it's impossible to give everybody everything.
Yeah.
Like somebody has to like step back a little bit. In this movie, Gamora stepped back a little bit, but she still had her moments to shine.
And I agree, because I actually think my opinion is I think it was well balanced. It wasn't. I think they could have. I think they there could have been more with that, but I think it's good that they didn't. Specifically because I think there will be payoff for more of that in Infinity War because of how closely they are tied to Thanos.
Yeah.
And it was a smart decision not to
just put all their cards on the table.
Right. And because, again, you need focus with a movie like that. Like, you're talking TV series, obviously, then, yeah, you can't afford to spend time on that.
Exactly.
But with this movie, you've got to stay focused.
Yeah, you've got an hour and a half to tell this story.
Yeah. And you want to stay focused on Star-Lord and his father issues, which... tying back to us again, that's a perfect story for us with both of our backgrounds.
Right? Yeah, we both, we both have daddy issues. Yeah. It's amazing we didn't end up on a stripper pole, but
well, I was too fat to stay up on one. So
instead of stripping, I eat. Yeah, I like this movie is very poignant for me. Like it hit a lot of buttons, from dad issues and family issues to abandonment issues, and then also like Groot, like raising a child.
Yeah,
like Groot is he's baby Groot. He is a child. They had
to protect him. He wasn't the force that he was before.
No, not at all. He's a baby. You have to tell him the same thing 17 times, and he still screws it up. And it was great comic relief, but it was also like they are a family. They really are at this point a family, with Star-Lord and Gamora kind of like trying to figure out how to raise and nurture an emotionally stunted Drax and a baby Groot and like a teenage rebellious Rocket Raccoon. Like it's all there, and it was good. Like, what a really like complete movie.
Yeah,
it was a complete movie, which is refreshing for a summer action film. So I complain about it all the time, but like, you're not going to get that kind of film out of Michael Bay.
No, never.
Transformers is never going to have that kind of storytelling.
But I mean, even let's take Michael Bay out of the picture. Like, it's as great as the Russo brothers are. They're doing some big stories.
They're doing different kinds of stories for sure.
Different, and they do a great job.
They do,
but the emotional complexity and how emotionally compelling Gunn is with these characters is what I think separates Guardians more than just the cosmic nature of this.
Right.
It really does feel. It doesn't feel outside of the Marvel universe, but it really does feel like it's a bit of in a class of its own. I'm very interested to see. It makes me even more excited about Taika Waititi. The director for Thor 3 for Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Because I also like his sensibilities as a director too.
Yeah.
He's a guy who worked on he was a writer for Flight of the Conchords. I watched Hunt for the Wilder People. And while it's not the same as James Gunn, there's definitely a very strong emotional core to what he did in that movie.
Right.
But definitely like great comedy, solid plotting, clear plotting, but definitely like an emotional complexity that I don't think you would see elsewhere. It'll be interesting to see in the grand scale of a story like that to see how that works. But I'm it gets me more excited for cosmic Marvel right now.
Well, I need to follow. I mean, I think James Gunn has the advantage over the Russo brothers and the other directors of the Marvel Universe in that right now the Guardians are kind of
self-contained.
Yeah, completely. Like, there's not a lot happening in the Guardians movies that is driving the Marvel Universe forward in an obvious, direct way.
Right, because we don't know how that's going to pay off for Thanos at this point.
Yeah. I mean, it's all leading to Thanos. Yeah. It definitely is.
We know there's a connection.
Yeah, but it's not like, a Captain America movie or an Iron Man movie.
Has much bigger ramifications for the rest of the Marvel universe.
And everybody's much more tied into it, where like what the Guardians do doesn't really affect Captain America at this point in time.
Right.
and vice versa. So he has a little more freedom to play with these characters and to give them their moments without having to hit certain beats to carry the movie forward. And oftentimes, well, like in this movie, really nothing happens in this movie. There's only one thing that actually happens in the movie that moves the Marvel Universe forward, and that's Nebula's quest to kill Thanos.
Right.
And then you have the end credit scene with the reveal of Adam Warlock.
Right.
Other than that, there's nothing in this movie that moves the story forward in an obvious way. Not in an obvious way.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, in the same way that, the first Guardians movie had, the villain was also very tied to Thanos. And we got to see Thanos as well.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. I do agree that there's that freedom.
Not to take anything away from James Gunn. He's a brilliant director. He's handled these movies geniusly.
Or the Russo brothers. I love the Russo brothers
for sure.
too, because those guys.
And Joss Whedon.
Well, those guys were part of Community. That's one of one of the shows that I really, really loved.
Yeah.
For a good chunk of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely don't want to crap on the Russo brothers.
No, not at all. Or Joss Whedon, or Kenneth Branagh. You can make a case about with what he did with Thor, but whatever. I mean, I think they were still trying to kind of figure out what it meant to make a Marvel Universe movie, and what are the sensibilities that you need to bring to the table and stuff like that. I think that they're a lot smarter about it now and have figured it out, and definitely have a formula that works. And
I didn't feel this held necessarily as much to that formula. Now, I want there's certain things that also do stand out for me a little bit more. Now, I've also been one of the guys to defend Marvel on that whole soundtrack thing, because I am aware of Iron Man's theme and Cap's theme
for sure.
and the Avengers theme. Those are the three that I can only really point out. I don't know what Thor's theme sounds like, but the Guardians theme, obviously the soundtrack, the pop soundtrack has gotten a lot of attention for Guardians 1, and also Guardians 2 definitely is a solid one too. But I enjoy the orchestral score as well for Guardians of the Galaxy, and I love the theme. I know the theme. I have it in some playlists, and I heard that cue as soon as the movie starts up, and they have their big action scene out on that platform. I love it. And I liked what they did with it. The different variations of it. Sure, it's not as complex necessarily as Star Wars in the same way that they build the motifs, or Lord of the Rings the way they did, but this was definitely, to me, was a very, very compelling soundtrack as well, a score as well. So the whole the Marvel formula, it feels, we were talking about this very briefly, but this is the second Phase 3 movie, and it really feels like it's moving. I don't know if I can necessarily say out of that formula, but it definitely feels like things are moving and feels fresh enough. I don't feel like I'm watching the same movie. I know some people say that, watching Doctor Strange is like watching Iron Man with magic. I can't agree with that, because that ending was clever. It wasn't just blowing up some big thing in the sky. I mean, some magic, so
yeah.
And he wasn't, and he didn't end up becoming this, he was still not Sorcerer Supreme at the end of that movie, which I thought was a smart decision. For sure. Maybe they've learned a few things along the way to maybe pace their characters out a little bit more to save for some of those bigger moments. I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, what you're saying is that it didn't end in the same way, but I mean, the beats were still there.
Yeah,
but
I think that's also the natural beats that you get in a hero's journey too.
Absolutely. And that was where I was going with that. I was like, yes, there are beats and there are formulas of how these stories work.
Yeah.
And if you're expecting the new Star Wars movies to not follow these beats, you're going to be very disappointed. You're going to be really angry and feel like they're just remaking those movies over and over. They've been remaking these stories since Jason and the Argonauts. Everybody calm down. Yeah. What do you expect?
Since people were telling stories around the fire, it's been the same. What was it? Someone said there's 6 different stories.
Yeah, and that's it. Yeah. And there's only so many different ways to tell. And we've gotten to a point in history where everybody has kind of figured out this is the best way to tell the story.
Yeah.
And every once in a while you have somebody who breaks the mold.
Yeah.
But
usually
that's the exception.
Even when they break the mold, it's usually only with slight variations.
Yeah,
to it.
exactly. Because there really is only so many stories and only so many ways to tell those stories. Like, you're just kind of, you know.
I mean, that's what I love about Shane Black, is that he likes to turn things over on what you expect. But it isn't that he breaks the formula. It's just that he knows how to play on your expectations.
Right, exactly.
So that's always a fun discussion. It'll be interesting to see. I'd like to hear what people have to say about that, you know, as far as formulaic movie, what they consider to be formulaic and predictable, and what they really want out of movies. Because that's one thing I see in a lot of reviews, that this is predictable. I've gotten, like, I used to feel like being predictable was a bad thing, but I've gotten past that now.
Right.
It's just, is it compelling? Yeah.
Is it interesting? Is it interesting?
Yeah.
You know, you can absolutely tell. We see it all the time. Obviously, great story. You know, the same story, but you can tell it well or you can tell it badly.
Right.
And that's the only difference, is like, are you telling this story in a compelling way, or are you telling it in a way that just like I'm not interested in? You know, like the new Captain America series is getting a lot of heat because they're doing something different with Captain America, and you know he's an agent. He's in Hydra, and you know he's a monster, and he's killing all these people, and people are livid. So much so that like Marvel had to make a press release about it, of like, it's okay, people, like we know what we're doing, like. I understand, like, you're concerned, like, this is not the Captain America that you're used to, but that's kind of the point. Like, you know, that is how stories are made interesting. You subvert expectations, but still tell the same story, that, you know, like, Captain America will eventually come out of the closet as a good guy. Like, you know, he's not going to forever be this horrible monster of Hydra. Like, everybody calm down. Like, it's going somewhere. Like, this is, you know, it gets boring when it's the same old, and not done well. So I think, you know, taking it back to Guardians, like, they did a good job of, in many ways, it follows the same beats. You know, like there's big action sequences in the beginning, and then there's, you know, they steal something, and then, you know, there's people chasing them, and you know, Star-Lord's history.
There's a couple things though I do like it with this movie is. And maybe this is a similarity to Empire, is the group is split up. You know, you kind of have like, if you could kind of make Rocket and Groot more like, you know, in some ways a little bit like Han, Leia, and Chewie experience some darker things than Luke is. While Luke is like is having a deepening of his relationship, you know, with the Force, and finding out who he is and what he's capable of. Which is like, that's a sort of cool moment for Star-Lord as well, as far as his self-discovery. And this villain, definitely a great addition. Not a villain you'd expect. Ego the Living Planet is not a villain you'd expect in any movie ever. But a very high concept.
Because the name is a little point on. Like, it's a little on the nose.
Which I always kind of liked, was the parting line in the first movie when Yondu says, "Man, I'm glad I didn't deliver that guy to his dad. He was such a dick." So when I heard that Ego the Living Planet was his name, I thought about that line. I was always like, "Oh, that's perfect."
Yeah, it makes total sense, and he is. And I thought, you know, like, you know, the other often used complaint on Marvel movies is like just how lame their villains are. This villain was really well fleshed out.
Yeah.
Like, you knew what his motivations were.
Very clear motivations.
You knew what his
complexity
backstory.
To who he was, and even complexity in who he felt he had to be.
Yeah.
You know, he wasn't just a maniacal, one-dimensional force of evil. There was nuance and thought process to who he was, and how that affected his relationship with his son.
Yeah, it was good. He was really good. It was a perfect use of that character.
Yeah,
for that role. I mean, I know they killed him. I kind of wish he was still around. I mean, that's one problem I do have with the Marvel movies, is they love to kill their villains unless it's Red Skull. But otherwise,
that's right. But they can't bring him.
But they can't bring him. They're not going to bring him back. But he's not dead. He's the only guy. I mean, it was good. He was great. It was a good character.
Well, I guess with the nature of the story, they couldn't. they couldn't keep him around, but you would have still liked them to figure out a way to keep him around. Because I know that was my Starkiller Base complaint, was like Starkiller Base was so big and awesome and
fearful.
Fearful. Like it would have been, and it would have also been nice to, after destroying 2 Death Stars, to keep one around.
To not.
Yeah, exactly. Well, at least to handicap it and have it come back later.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't. That's the problem with the MCU is like you're never gonna go back and revisit villains. Like,
right.
There's not enough time, and there's no point in dragging this stuff. Well,
Loki,
back.
they've gotten a chance to do, and because they visited him again, it's also made him more compelling.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, all right. I'll stand corrected on Loki, but I mean, like for the most part, like you're not gonna go back and fight you're not gonna fight Zemo again.
Yeah.
You're not gonna fight Malekith.
No, please don't. Please don't. Please don't.
So like
they could have kept Ironmonger around, Jeff Bridges. You know.
Yeah.
That would have been that's a character that is
good one to have
interesting enough that keeping them around would have been worthwhile.
Yeah.
I think it makes sense for the nature of a lot of these villains. Yeah, Ronan. I know I know there's plenty of complaints just because Ronan is a bigger force to be reckoned with in the comics, but I thought it was appropriate that they got rid of him.
Yeah, because what else are you gonna do with him? Like you've already seen his trick.
Yeah.
Like okay.
Yeah.
In the movies, like it's just different. In the comic books, yes. Like in the comic books, you got to keep everybody alive because you got to continue to recycle through them every couple months as you do different stories. In the movies, you're not going to go back and do another Ronin movie. Like it's just not going to happen.
Right. I mean, I can't really tell what you would build on his character. I mean, maybe someone could come up with something compelling if they have the opportunity, but I don't really see it with Ronin's character. Again, though, I'm not as familiar. Like, I can't really pull from, like, oh, well, this is something cool that Ronan did, or this is some nuance to his character. There probably is, so it would be nice to get the opportunity to have them come back. Maybe Spider-Man Homecoming will have a chance.
That's what the comic books are for. Yeah. It's not, like, that's not what, like, you have an hour and a half to tell these stories.
But that could help with the movie. Like you were saying, let's say Ego, they didn't get rid of Ego. Like, Ego could be something interesting to further, well... we got emotional complexity from Ego.
Yeah, I think like we've tried. I mean, like I said that, but as I think about it, I was like, you really kind of told everything you're going to tell in a cinematic universe about that character.
Yeah, outside of Loki and I think you could.
Loki has more complexity to it because he
Ultron
is Thor's
doesn't,
brother. Ultron doesn't. No, I mean you can keep bringing him back, but it's really the same story.
Yeah.
AI gone wrong. Like,
that wants to end humanity because they are the problem.
Right.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think of other villains that you could really kind of build on. I know Goblin and Ock are ones that you can do stuff with like that. Lizard. Again, Spider-Man's villains are very compelling. So. Yeah,
but they're also kind of one focus too of science gone wrong.
Yeah, but there's different nuance you can add.
I suppose.
Yeah.
I suppose. Is it going to make
the problem is we've seen so much Green Goblin at this point. We need to move on.
I never want to see Goblin again. Yeah. I feel the same way about Goblin as I do Phoenix. Like I'm over it. Let's just not do that again.
Right.
So what are they doing? They're making a Phoenix movie.
Well, that's Fox.
Damn it, Fox.
Let's move on from that. Let's think positive vibes, guys. Anyway, so let us know what you think of Guardians of the Galaxy. If you're listening to this without seeing it, I don't know what you're thinking. It's definitely worth going in for some of those surprises, even if you feel some of those are telegraphed. Let us know what you think about Guardians of the Galaxy after you've seen it. Come back and check out this episode. Don't forget to check out other episodes like the Star Wars RPG and other things that we're doing, like the Weight Loss Civil War, our Patreon, what we're doing on Patreon, and some of the exclusives that we'll be offering on Patreon as well very, very soon. And more, what our shenanigans are on all our social media. You can check out all of that at certainpov.com. And until next week, stay scruffy, my nerf herders.
Thanks for listening to Certain Point of View. Don't miss an episode. Just subscribe, rate, and review the podcast on iTunes. Head over to certainpov.com.